The two best games of the tournament so far bookended Thursday night's action and at the same time extended the Big Ten and the Pac-12's 2 decades-long title droughts. How can you not love college basketball?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined by my fellow host, Andy Patton, and we're literally like 10 minutes after Gonzaga just finished off UCLA. What a wild game. We want to thank you for joining us as we dive in. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And Andy, very seriously, I already said it. How can you not love this like crazy? We had an absolutely electric start to the second weekend of the 23 NCAA men's tournament. We had the first overtime game of the March Madness to kick things off. We're going to get into that in just a second. And of course, FAU's first ever Elite Eight and UConn's dominating performance over Arkansas. But first, we're going to start at the end with the nightcap. Because, Andy, let's be honest, for most of Thursday night, we thought we were going to be leading this show with Kansas State, Michigan State, an epic overtime game, an epic performance, and we'll still obviously get there.
Oh, yeah.
But then, Andy, the final 2.5 minutes of the Gonzaga UCLA game happened, and it changed the trajectory of this entire show. Andy, we knew coming in, this is Ken Palm's number 1 offense against Ken Palm's number 2 defense, and we knew something has to give. We surmised that perhaps this would be the game when UCLA missing Jalen Clark and at game time learning about Adembona also being out, we figured at some point that had to catch up with them, and we guessed that Thursday night's game would be the moment that it did, and it turned out that that was correct. I want to start with the first half before we get into all the histrionics of the second half and the game ending. At halftime, UCLA had 46 points. It kind of looked like, if we're being honest, they had a 13-point lead. Gonzaga hadn't come back from a 13-point lead all season. I'm kind of starting to think this might be the end of the line for the Zags and Mark Few. Where was your head at in the first half and at halftime?
Yeah, Gonzaga's perimeter defense and ball screen defense has just been bad all season long. There's no other possible way to look at it. It didn't really improve throughout the season. They made some adjustments. They've changed some personnel a little bit, but at the end of the day, this is a team that does not have a rim protector. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of high-level athletes out on the perimeter, especially the big man. Drew Timme is not a good defensive player in that situation. And so we had the situation where Gonzaga was getting gashed by the very thing that has hurt them all year long. Meanwhile, offensively, Drew Timme was doing everything in the first half, and nobody else was really stepping up. And here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, Isaac. There was just no way for this game to not end up being an instant classic. It always is.
That's right.
When these two teams play each other. It is like clockwork that you can just set your timer to know, hey, I'm going to have a heart attack in the middle of this Gonzaga UCLA game, because that is what they do 17 years to the day from Adam Morrison crying on a basketball court after a 17-point advantage erased in the second half by UCLA. They came back, they got the steal. Jordan Farmar gets that ball. Right? Throw it back. Adam Morrison on the floor. And then we had the redemption, of course, 2021, Jalen Clark, extraordinary shot.
Suggs.
Sorry, Jalen Suggs. We've been talking so much about Jalen Clark and the injury. Jalen Suggs hits an extraordinary game winner for the Zags in 2021. And now there was just no way. I know UCLA was up 13 at half, and we felt it. It felt like the Zags were maybe not going to be able to figure out a way to claw back into this game. They weren't getting stops defensively. And then, of course, they did. And then they got a comfortable lead. But we should have known. We should have known, right? There was just no way for this game to end any other way than somebody hitting a huge shot, the kind of shot that defines your collegiate career in the final 10 seconds. Because guess what? It seems to be what happens when these two teams play each other.
The funny thing is, let's look at, Julian Strawther's 3-pointer to essentially win the game was not that much shallower than Jalen Suggs' shot you just talked about. Like, that was so deep. And even though it was Gonzaga that had to come back to get that 10-point lead, it almost happened so similarly to that loss you talked about with Adam Morrison on the floor. With UCLA making this like, are you kidding me type comeback, which for UCLA is like, oh my word. So, Andy, let's talk about UCLA missing these two guys in Bona and Jalen Clark, because Mick Cronin, UCLA's head coach, kind of feared and talked about like, hey, like at some point it feels like we're going to run out of gas here. And that's kind of how it went, quite honestly. Gonzaga just kept pushing. Drew Timme had 35 points. Drew's teammates had 30 points. Like, it was so ridiculous what he was doing. But UCLA really felt like they were running out of gas. They had this like crazy long drought. I can't even remember how long it was now, like over 10 minutes. Jaime Jaquez had a layup at 12:30 and then had another layup at 1:14. No field goals in between there. Gonzaga was on like a 22-4 run in that stretch. But then we get to the final 2.5 minutes of this game, and it's like we could spend a whole show just talking about that final 150 seconds, because it just, UCLA finally started attacking the rim again. Gonzaga started missing every free throw they found. And throwing the ball away.
Markquis Smith threw the ball to Mick Cronin on the sideline instead of a teammate. Yeah, that was a pretty ugly turnover.
So, like, it just felt like Gonzaga had come back to wrest control away from UCLA, and that they were just going to lose it. And then, with about 12 seconds to go, Amari Bailey buries this three from out top to get the lead back for UCLA. And at that point, I tweeted out, whatever happens in this final 12 seconds, this is another epic battle between these two schools. Little did I know how much more there was to go in that final 12 seconds. So, Andy, Gonzaga is down 1 at that point. What does Mark Few draw up for that final play?
He's talking to his buddy Jay Wright. He said it after the game that he used an old play from Jay Wright's playbook. And look, they've done this before. This is the second time they've ran this play this year. Julian Strawther gets the ball top of the key. His design is to read whether the player is going under the screen. I mean, it's just a simple ball screen action. Are they going under? Are they going over it? The time against BYU that it happened, Drew Timme was the one setting the screen, and I think Drew was kind of just in the way, quite honestly. And a BYU defender tried to go around Drew Timme. Strawther pulled up, hit a three with 7.5 seconds left, gave Gonzaga a victory over the Cougars. And they ran pretty much the exact same thing here. It was Markquis Smith, not Drew Timme, down low. But same situation. Strawther read the defense. They went under because he was like 5 feet behind the 3-point line. So, of course, any rational defensive player in that situation, when Gonzaga's down by 1, they don't need a 3. They need a 2. They went under the screen, assuming I'm going to just stop him from getting downhill and going towards the basket. And Strawther said, "This is my town. I'm from Las Vegas. This is my place. I was recruited with Jalen Suggs. We were in the same recruiting class. I want to be on that same level. I'm going to pull up this shot. I've done it before. I've made it before." Mark Few said after the game, "We practiced that." He practices that. He did not look – there was no lack of confidence for Julian Strawther pulling that shot, hitting that one. They come down the floor. This will get lost a little bit in the shuffle of this game too. Markquis Smith gets a steal. Under 3 seconds left. Tiger Campbell had the ball. They had a chance. They had a chance to get at least some kind of look at the rim. Markquis Smith steals the ball. Julian Strawther gets fouled, misses the first free throw because, man, Gonzaga did not want to make free throws at the end of this basketball game. But it did not matter. The Zags eventually pulled off a victory. An incredible sequence of events to end that game. And again, another chapter and just an iconic series of basketball games between these two teams.
Well, and you talked about that look that UCLA had after Strawther hit that last free throw to go up 3. UCLA, let's not lose this either, had another great look. Tiger Campbell had one about just inside a half court. It was about as good a look as you're going to get with 1 point whatever was left to run that. And so well executed by UCLA, but it just missed that overtime tying shot. And so For the second year in a row, UCLA is sent home in the round of 16, and Gonzaga marches on to the Elite Eight. And we'll talk about it, but they're going to have another epic battle. This one will be against UConn for the right to go on to the Final Four.
Yeah, Gonzaga UConn is going to be an absolute blast of a basketball game. Well, Isaac, Markquis Nowell would not be denied a berth in the Elite Eight. He hobbled his team to victory, quite literally. All 5'8" of him put a whole basketball team on his back with a bum ankle, lifted this team to victory over Michigan State. Isaac, the question we have to ask now, is this team from Kansas State this year's team of destiny? Before we get into that, though, today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. The NCAA Tournament is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That is bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. We will have lines and discussion about the games coming up in the Elite Eight on Saturday and Sunday, so check that out there. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Isaac, like you said at the onset of the show, it's a little wild that we're not leading with this basketball game. This was an obscenely good basketball game. The shot making, the shot creation, the different coaching strategies by Tom Izzo and Jerome Tang, two of the absolute best in the business right now. Izzo, of course, somebody who's been at the top of that list for decades. Tang, much, much newer to the conversation, but unequivocally in the conversation after the job that he has done with Kansas State this year. But Isaac, the story of this game is Markquis Nowell.
It really.
I talked about Markquis Nowell being a Kemba Walker-esque comparison. And they're not super similar players, but like, can he lead his team on a run and do that kind of thing? And boy, did he look like it in this game. 20 points, 19 assists. That is a record. It is not a tie. He has the record for most assists in an NCAA tournament game. He's also one of only 3 players in the last decade, not in the NCAA tournament, mind you, total period in Division I in the last 10 years to have 18 plus points and 18 plus assists in a game. The only 2 people to do that, Ja Morant and Trae Young.
I've heard of them. They are good at basketball.
Darn good group for Markquis Nowell to be in 20 points again, 19 assists. He also had 5 steals, 3 boards, and 1 good ankle. He hurt himself early in the game. I think it was midway through the second half. I think when he went down with that ankle injury, got it taped up, came back in, was hobbling, hit that incredible
what was that
banked 3-pointer while on 1 foot. I mean, the stories here, it's like the stuff of legends. And we're talking about real things that happened with a real basketball player on Thursday, and we didn't even lead with it. I love this sport. I love this sport. The fact that we get to talk about all of this stuff, we get to talk about that epic Gonzaga UCLA game, and then Markquis Nowell putting an entire team on his back and carrying Kansas State to the Elite Eight. What fun.
And not to mention, as we said off the top, these 2 epic games ended the Pac-12's run in this tournament. Yep. UCLA was the last Pac-12 team. They haven't won a national championship since '97. And then Kansas State knocking off Michigan State was the last Big Ten team in the tournament. So it extends the Big Ten's championship drought going back to 2000. I mean, it's just, like you said, there's just so many stories. And that's one of the places I want to start with this game, because both of these teams, both Kansas State and Michigan State, we've talked about it so much, but let's start with Michigan State, who lost. Like, you hate it for them, because they've done such a good job of just rising to the occasion following the shooting that happened on campus back in February. They went 3-2 the rest of the regular season after that, lost to Ohio State in their first Big Ten tournament game.
Yep.
But then, man, the way they have responded in this NCAA tournament, it's nothing short of Tom Izzo. I mean, it's just how can you ever deny his greatness. And so unfortunately they fall, but that is what it is. And as for Kansas State, we've obviously talked about this a lot as well. They were picked dead freaking last in the Big 12 in the preseason poll. And then they come out, not only have a solid regular season, not only get a 3 seed, but they're moving into the Elite 8. Like, Andy, it's so great. So we talked coming in that Markquis Nowell and Keontae Johnson had to both be really, really good in this game. And they absolutely were. Combined 42 points on 17 of 36 shooting. Just a great night. And one of the things I love is that they do not look like a duo that's only played basketball together for less than a year of their life. Like, these two guys have a connection that you typically see with like seniors, right? Who have been playing together for 4 years. And so
how about that alley-oop at the end of the game? Like, that was
like as Markquis Nowell is looking over at Jerome Tang, like they're having a conversation about plays, and then he's like, "Oh,
they're fighting." It looked like they were fighting, and there was conversation that I saw on Twitter. People like, "Well, was that a design play? Was he intentionally looking away and Jerome Tang signaling to throw an alley-oop?" And Nowell, he said no after the game. He basically said no, like, I was calling a different play than coach was, and he was mad at me for it. But then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Keontae cut to the basket, and I just threw it up for him. And it's like, that's crazy to have that kind of connection, to have that kind of ability. I mean, Nowell's floor vision is spectacular. It's as good as anybody, certainly still in the tournament, and anybody in college basketball, quite honestly. I mean, some of the passes that he made in this game were just unreal. He got guys the ball in their hands in a perfect spot to score around the rim with no defense on them, threaded the needle in ways that most point guards can't. Almost all the point guards can't do it. And for him to be able to do that, to have that connection with Johnson, and of course, Keontae Johnson, what a story. You know, we've talked about him a handful of times on here, but to go from being most known for being the player that collapsed on the floor shortly after COVID and having all the health issues that he had leaving Florida, coming back to be in the situation he's in now, where him and Markquis Nowell, kind of this underdog figure, are helping lead a first-year head coach in the Elite 8 out of the Big 12. You absolutely love to see it. You just love to see it.
Oh, man. I want to also make sure to mention Ish Massoud, who had an incredible shooting game, like hit all these great threes. Of course, his first non-3 of the game was this 2 off a pass from Nowell that I think put them back, it gave him a 96-93 lead that was the final score of the game. And so he kind of hit that game winner there. But man, just electric. And you want to point out, like, it felt like Kansas State might have ran away with it if the Nowell injury hadn't happened. Michigan State went on a run at that point, got it tied up at 50, and really thought that they might kind of get control of the game. But then Kansas State, like, that's what I love about games like this, is both teams going on runs and then both teams responding to those runs. And this dude is just so tough. I don't think we can talk about him enough. They're at home in MSG. Like, get him off his feet immediately so that he is ready. Thankfully for them, they're not playing Tennessee, because that would have been something to have to watch and unfold. But still excited to see what he'll do against Florida Atlantic. But my goodness, Andy, first overtime game of the tournament, and it did not disappoint.
Not at all.
Well, folks, Florida Atlantic, the team that Kansas State will be playing to go to the Final Four, took down Tennessee and will make their first ever Elite 8 appearance in the same tournament in which they won their first ever NCAA tournament game. Why are we not surprised about this result? We will get to that in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. The Built Bar March Madness bracket is here. Listen, we know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's the time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know I'll be voting for the churro bar, because that thing is insanely good. And if you want to vote for your favorite team to win, then you'll be voting for your favorite bar as well. Support your team, support your favorite bar or puff. And keep in mind, when you vote, you will be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription of Built to have the best bars or puffs delivered straight to your door every month. You got to try Built, the best protein bar ever. What makes them so good? Well, for starters, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. So run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. Built Bar, a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Andy, this FAU Tennessee game, it kind of felt for a while like how UCLA Gonzaga felt in the first half. I was like, listen, FAU, nice run, won a crud ton of games this season, but it's just coming to an end against a better team. And that's where it was at halftime. It was a classic. Like, if you had told me the score of this game at halftime, 27-22, I would have said to you, oh, that's cool. Who's Tennessee playing?
For the record, sorry to interrupt you, Isaac.
No,
but
you're good.
It was 27-22 at the same time during the Gonzaga UCLA game. Like the score was 27-22 at the same time in real life, but there was like 11 minutes left in the first half of the Gonzaga UCLA game, which I thought was a nice but unsurprising spread between those two games.
Which was hilarious because at the same time, we had Ken Palm's number 1 and number 2 defense going, and one of them was living up to that, and the other not quite so much. But it just kind of felt like, well, Tennessee's just going to kind of keep pulling away. And then FAU goes on this 18-2 run to get up 51-41 in the second half. And Andy, I think a lot of people watching that are like, oh, this big underdog, the Owls, they come out, look what they're doing to the big bad Tennessee. But it's not that wild of a result. FAU came into this game 21st at Ken Palm. That's one spot higher than Kansas State was. The Wildcats were 22nd. FAU is 29th in offensive efficiency at Ken Palm. Tennessee was 60th. Now, obviously, Tennessee's defense is higher than FAU's, but FAU's defense is 32nd. Like, it's not
bad at all.
Nothing. Yeah, I'm not going to sniff at that. And so, like, this is a legit matchup between two really, really good basketball teams. Andy, if people kind of slept on FAU last weekend, what do they need to know? Like, we had the massive John L. Davis game last weekend. What do we see from this team coached by Mr. Dusty May?
Yeah, I think we haven't done a good enough job of fully diving into Florida Atlantic. I say we as a kind of a general college basketball media, although ourselves included. I think that it was a fun run, but certainly, they didn't play a 1 seed in the second round like you typically expect an 8-9 seed to do because, shout out Purdue for losing there to Fairleigh Dickinson. And so I think FAU, they then beat Fairleigh Dickinson, and it was a kind of a close game, and they finished out the game by dunking and kind of waving at the FDU people. And I remember that kind of alienated some people who were like, oh, you're kind of making yourselves the villains now. But then they come out and beat a Tennessee team, and now it's like, okay, they didn't just get here by beating underdogs. Like they're a legitimate force. And you mentioned John L. Davis, and he was the leading scorer in this game against Tennessee. He wasn't particularly efficient. He was 9 of 10 from the free throw line, which really helped them out a lot. But for Florida Atlantic, like you said, they're a balanced team. They're good offensively. They're good defensively. They're a great 3-point shooting team, shoot over 37% from deep as a team. When you can play good team defense and shoot well from beyond the arc, you can beat just about anybody. And then if you go out and you out-rebound a much bigger, much more physical Tennessee team, that's all that people talked about with Tennessee was how big and how strong they are and the references to playing rugby when you're playing against them. And guess what? FAU went out and got 4 more rebounds than them.
They absolutely did that.
That's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you need to do. You go out, you out-rebound, you out-muscle, you out-physical a team that's, by all accounts, bigger and stronger than you are. And that's how you're going to win. Florida Atlantic's 34-3 on the year. You don't do that just by playing bad teams. If you go 34-3, it's because you have good team, you have talented players, you're a talented coach, and you have to believe you're capable of going out and beating anybody. And after beating Tennessee, I think the Owls feel like they can beat just about anybody. Will they beat a fully healthy Markquis Nowell? I'm not sure I would bet on it, but we also don't know if they're going to get a fully healthy Markquis Nowell. So it changes the conversation there pretty considerably in their potential next matchup.
On Saturday. Andy, I'm really glad we started this segment talking about praising FAU rather than kind of beaten down on Tennessee, because I think that would have been the easy tendency to go to. But now that we've praised FAU,
now we got it out of the way.
We can do that. I loved it because somebody tweeted at me after this game ended. He was like, man, I probably would have gone with Tennessee or Purdue, but you had those nuggets about the 3-point shooting, and so I didn't pick either of them. And I said, thank you. The numbers don't lie, and it always comes to fruition. So, folks, if you heard us say this phrase, don't trust Tennessee, you were in on this, you knew it, and you saw it coming from a mile away. Now, did I think it was going to happen in this game? Nope. I thought Tennessee was going to win this game, and they did not. But we've talked about this 3-point shooting numbers, and it came to fruition on Thursday night. Tennessee goes 6 of 23 from the 3-point line, 26.1%. Not that FAU was much better. They only shot 29%, but it was better than Tennessee's 26%, and sometimes that's enough to do it. These Vols just do not shoot well enough beyond the arc to be I'll say they could be a Final Four caliber team because of their defense, but they are not a national champion caliber team because of that. Unfortunately, I wish that was true. I was all in on Tennessee from the beginning of the year, but they just haven't done it consistently enough. And that's where we're at. And unfortunately for the Vols, they're headed home to Knoxville. You hate it because you wonder what they could have done with Sakai Ziegler. Yeah, but that's sports, man, and that's where we're at. Congrats to Dusty May and the Owls as they move on, and cannot wait for that matchup. But Andy, there's one game we have yet to get to, and that's UConn against Arkansas. And you know why we haven't gotten to that game until now? Because that is another SEC team that got sent packing on Thursday night, and this one was not a game. UConn 88-65 over the
didn't even feel that close.
And it did. I mean, that's a 23-point mark, but that's the thing. UConn got out to a 10-point lead really quick, was just shy of a 20-point lead at the half, and then basically played with a 20-point lead, just kind of held that throughout the rest of the game. And so because we've spent so much time on the other games, Andy, I just want to ask this simple question. Earlier this season, there were moments where even though UConn only got to number 2 in the polls, I know I was in on hey, UConn should be number 1 over Purdue right now. And it feels like, to me at least, that they are back playing at that level. So the question, quite quickly, because I know we got to get out of here, is this. Are they playing right now better than they were then, worse than they were then, or equal to how they were then?
I think better. I honestly, this team has looked fantastic in these games. The second half that they put together against St. Mary's in the second round was extraordinary. And yes, St. Mary's did suffer an injury. Alex Dukas went out late in the first half. That's a tough player for St. Mary's to be missing, but he's not there. He wasn't their best player. It wasn't Logan Johnson going out. It wasn't Aiden Mahaney going out. It was a key role player for St. Mary's going out, and then UConn just blasted them in the second half. And they beat Iona. Harder to gauge that game because there was a talent discrepancy, but I think it's impressive to anytime you beat Rick Pitino in March. It's impressive regardless to beat Rick Pitino in March, to then blast St. Mary's the way that they did, and then beat an Arkansas team that looked really, really good against Kansas. And Arkansas has been inconsistent this year. They've had highs and lows. I mean, it's been kind of all over the place, which makes it a little bit harder to judge a performance against them. But the way that UConn has played coming into this through the NCAA tournament, Adama Sanogo in particular he's just been unbelievable. If it weren't for Drew Timme dropping 36, I think that Adama Sanogo would be the clear best performer in the NCAA tournament. It's him, it's Markquis Nowell, it's Drew Timme. Those three guys are the best 3 players playing right now. And I'm so excited that we're going to get to see all 3 of them advance and continue to play, because the way that Sanogo and Donovan Klingon, their kind of 2-headed monster that they have in the front court, Gonzaga hasn't seen that kind of size very much this year. And it's going to be a huge issue for them. And I think this UConn team, for them, it's always going to be the guards. Can the guards play more reliably? Can they be more consistent? Jordan Hawkins was their leading scorer in the game against Arkansas. That's a huge sign for them going forward, that they weren't so dependent on Adama Sanogo in order to win that game, especially for Hawkins to be the leading scorer against a team with Anthony Black, a team with Jordan Walsh, 2 of the best perimeter defensive players in the country, quite honestly. Joey Calcaterra has stepped up and been hitting outside shots for them. This team is cruising right now. And Gonzaga obviously has a ton of momentum after that win. They're an elite offensive team. Can UConn stop Drew Timme? All those conversations are there, but this UConn team has been playing really good basketball. And like you said, when they were playing their best basketball this season, they were the number 2 team in the country. Gonzaga started the season out as the number 2 team in the country. So this is a high level matchup that we're going to see on Saturday night.
I cannot wait for Drew Timme and Adama Sanogo. That is going to be absolutely awesome. Andy, bring it on. I'm right with you. I think they're playing better now than they were then, but obviously Gonzaga is playing their best basketball of the year as well. Bring it on Saturday night. It's going to be awesome.
We got a lot of games between now and Saturday night. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be one of the most exciting ones. But we got Bama, San Diego State tipping off on Friday afternoon. We're going to come at you guys with a punch of reaction to that game afterwards. We're going to talk previews on Saturday. So much more content. Like we said, it's not a 5 days a week show, folks. It is 7 days a week. We are coming at you every single day in March. Continue to stay with us. We very much appreciate it. You can find us on YouTube. Go hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. Leave us a review on iTunes. You can find the podcast wherever you already get podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter. All sorts of excellent content coming your way for the rest of the month and into the off season. Don't leave us when the season's over. We got transfer portal, coaching updates, all that good stuff coming your way for the foreseeable future. All right, Isaac, another day now, another day down, another great day coming our way on Friday, though. For now,
peace out.